Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames, and I'm back again with another video, this time kind of a real talk video, and one I've wanted to kind of talk about, one that I've struggled to talk about because there's so many different ways to go about this and so many different angles to tackle this really tricky subject right now, and that is, how does Xbox win anyone back? But, you know, for the purposes of this video, how does it win me back? Although I have all the consoles right now. Just for clarity's sake here, going into this video, I have a Series S, I have a Series X, I have a PS5, I have a Switch OLED, and a Switch 2, and a gaming rig PC. Yes, I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed in my life, for much better reasons than all the video game consoles I've listed. Trust me, my real blessings are way beyond that. But anyways, let's not get off track here. This is a weird subject because there's a lot of ramifications. There's a lot of just understandable negative energy towards Microsoft. They've kind of handled the last few years terribly. There's a lot of reasons to really, as a company, there's a lot of reasons to not like Microsoft at all as a corporation. They're a terrible corporation. What can I say? I hate Windows 11, and that's just the funny part. Like, there's some very serious, not funny reasons that you should maybe not ever purchase a Microsoft product. And my hat's off to anyone who goes cold turkey on them completely. There are very good reasons, but let's not get into too crazy serious a subject here. Again, I'm not that kind of channel here, but I wanted to just maybe not try to get so serious about, like, okay, let's not get into the nitty gritty of the inner workings of game development. Let's just have a little more free form. What, as a person who buys video games most of the time, you know, with their own money, what is it going to take to, say, get me excited for a new Microsoft Xbox console? So let's keep it sort of like Xbox related in particular here. You know, I did this for PlayStation 6, you know, things to fix for PS6, and I think it's fine. I think it's fair to say, hey, what are some 5 things that Xbox could do that I would like to see happen on a new system? So let's just dive into it. I'll go from the bottom up here, and the first one here that I really think needs to kind of be addressed is I think Microsoft should focus more on the Asian gaming market. I think they need a fun project. So maybe people don't know this, but Sony recently talked about they have a North Africa and Middle East hero project, where they're basically going to be helping fund and produce projects from North Africa, Middle Eastern countries. This is actually not the first time Sony's done this. Sony has had a thing called the China Hero Project, which has resulted in helping the funding of some large-scale games, one of them coming out, Phantom Blade Zero, I'm very much looking forward to. But you can also see this in Black Myth Wukong, which, you know, had like a year exclusivity on PlayStation 5. So I think Microsoft has always had a sort of sore spot. They've made small attempts here and there to get Japan on their side, and I think it goes beyond Japan. And one of the best strengths, I think, or one of the big success stories for Game Pass was getting Liza P from Korean developers, and that should have been a huge wake-up call to me that you should get a lot. And they did Crossfire X, and I think Remedy did like the single player, or somebody did the single player for Crossfire X when they brought that over to Xbox, and you know, they announced PSO2 New Genesis, but they need to go further. They need to go harder into getting big secure projects, like helping them out, because their sort of lack of I don't know, not vision, but lack of presence in the major Asian gaming markets is kind of leaving a sort of hole or a void in which people like Sony are kind of reaping the rewards by going in and being like, well, we'll help get this project going and we'll help fund it. And then you have games like Black Myth Wukong selling an absolute ton of copies, especially on PlayStation 5. So I think Microsoft is missing a little bit here by not aggressively going after the Chinese gaming market, the Korean gaming market, the Japanese gaming market, and then let's talk about all the Southeast Asian, you know, countries that could be, any one of them could explode with the next huge game, the next Liza P, the next Black Myth Wukong. Like, next Phantom Blade Zero. You know, like, again, we're living in a time where some of the greatest games could come from anywhere, and let's not even, that's to say nothing about, you know, India, which has, you know, well over 1 billion people, and who knows how many like absolutely amazing titles are just waiting to explode on the global stage coming from there. So again, just looking at this as an entirely number 5 here, I think Microsoft should make some more strides towards making big collaborations with major, you know, games that are coming out of Asia, you know, and that not just Japan, but yes, also Japan as well. They only really seem to have a sort of good working relationship with Sega, and I think they should go further. They should, you know, definitely try to, like, okay, well, let's get on that same level of good working terms with Square and Namco and Capcom and Koei Tecmo. And they kind of already are with Koei Tecmo because they got Ninja Gaiden 4. But that's a good start. But, like, yes, you look at Ninja Gaiden 4, and I want to see more of that kind of being pushed by Microsoft. Now, I'm not saying it needs to be exclusive. I think exclusivity is dead. I think even on the Sony side, exclusivity is dying on PlayStation. It's just dying a lot slower than Microsoft because Sony doesn't need to kill off its exclusivity as fast. But again, the rising cost of game development also just means that even Sony can't afford to keep their games exclusive anymore. But yeah, number 5, I think funding major Asian game projects is something I would like to see go forward from Microsoft because, you know, I didn't know what Phantom Blade Zero was at all. I mean, we saw it in a Sony State of Play, and we were like, oh, well, that looks nice, but it probably doesn't play like anything. And then it showed up a year ago at Summer Games Fest, and it was amazing. And it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm really glad that Sony helped get this game not only funded, but was helping to present the game in you know, places like Summer Games Fest, where a lot of people from around the world could actually go hands-on with the project and see how good it's turning out. So yeah, I think Microsoft would be great if they could do the same thing there. Number 4 is, I think next go around, or just starting from here really, I think Microsoft needs to really focus on revivals. And when I say revivals, they need to stop caring about how it looks in market conditions, because again, you're like the richest company on the planet. There really shouldn't be any sort of worry about, you know, market conditions or trend setting or whatever. If you want to win, you need to have a roster of games that cover every subject and base, and revivals are a good way to do this because they own so many classic IP. Through all their acquisitions and buyouts and whatever, the amount of games that they own from Rare, Bethesda, and Activision now, especially, it's actually staggering, really, when you think about it. When you think about just, I mean, you don't even have to go too far back into Rare's catalog, but I mean, they've done some stuff, and most of the time when they've dived into a sort of Rare IP, it had pretty good results, at least for Killer Instinct. Battletoads, it's a little mixed, but you know, it was something. But again, like, it's hard to look at the current year in 2025 when I'm recording this and seeing how they had a massive Perfect Dark project and then canceled it after reports internally were coming out that it was finally coming together nicely. And then they just canceled it for some short-term games because they have an AI investment to go into on the big corporate level. And this is all just damaging for the brand. It's damaging long-term. I know nobody in business thinks long-term, and I don't want to turn this into a business-oriented video, but I think one thing Microsoft could really needs to understand that they're not getting right now, or someone isn't getting there, is that you have all these brand revivals waiting in the wings. Like, people are chomping at the bit for a new Killer Instinct. That game was nothing but a huge success on the Xbox One generation. I have no idea why you wouldn't want to follow that up. Again, Perfect Dark was a good idea. You know, it's a shame that Microsoft has some of the, you know, historically worst project management in history, and then eventually led to a cancellation. But you shouldn't have canceled it. You shouldn't have canceled it. Even if it was having trouble getting off the ground, the best thing you could have really done is just nurture it and make it come out as a really good game. But again, we've also seen this happen where many times Microsoft has a big project, spends forever in development, and then when it finally does come out, it's still not that good, like Halo Infinite and Redfall and some others, although I don't think Redfall was in development super long. But yeah, we have seen projects gestate for a long time, and then they come out and they're okay. But at the end of the day, like, a project that's out and exists is better than a project that just fell into a void here. But yeah, there's so many rare IPs: Jet Force Gemini, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark should never have been canceled. Another more Killer Instinct, and Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon. There's plenty of other things within. You could probably dig up within Bethesda as well. But you got Quake sitting there, waiting in the wings. Hexen even maybe. There's just so many IPs that they actually own. It's insane to think about that. Rare has Banjo and Conquer and Jet Force Gemini and Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, Skylanders. They have Guitar Hero kind of just sitting back there. They have Tony Hawk. They did do a new Tony Hawk. I'm not going to harp on them for that. But I mean, just thinking about all the other things they could do. Pitfall. They could do something huge with Pitfall if they wanted to. So many IPs, and there's no hope, no future. None of them have any sort of promise to them going forward, and that's just insane to me. How does Microsoft, how does the leadership at Xbox, I'm talking about specifically you, Matt Booty, and Phil Spencer, and even Sarah Bond here, how does someone who you want to cultivate a fandom, you want to cultivate a consumer base that returns, when we know you literally own these beloved franchises and you do nothing with them, or worse is you announce them and cancel them. There are so many canceled projects between Xbox One and Xbox Series, of consoles, that it's how do you expect to sort of nurture, or how do you expect to have a returning consumer base when it's you buy all of these game companies, you get this IP, and then nothing ever happens with it. It's frustrating, because to look at this again from a Nintendo perspective, we know that unless you're a Star Fox or F-Zero fan, a Nintendo fan knows he's going to eventually get something along the lines on his favorite franchise. Kirby will come back. Donkey Kong came back. Mario will always be there. Luigi's Mansion will be there. Zelda will always be there. Xenoblade fans like myself, we know that Monolith loves their games. They will be there. Fire Emblem will be there. Metroid will be there. Even though Metroid doesn't sell super well, they will still take the time and effort to make both 2D and 3D Metroids, even when they have their own project management problems there. Animal Crossing will return. There's so many franchises that are going to come back. Yoshi will get another game. There will be other spin-offs. There will be multiple Mario RPG spin-offs. We know we're going to get fed. We know there's going to be a WarioWare. We know it'll happen eventually. We don't know that anything that you own at Microsoft will ever come back except maybe Halo and Forza in probably years. Again, going back to that thing. So number 4, revivals. You got to look at your library. The things that you own are cherished and beloved, and it's not just there's so many millions of millennial people waiting to spend money. There's untapped potential in cultivating a new generation of fans for Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie, especially Banjo and stuff like that. You have the ability and the option right at your fingertips to constantly be bringing in new young Xbox fans, but you don't do it, and that's frustrating. And that's something I would like to see addressed in the next generation. And 3 is very much a follow-up to 4, and that is we gotta stop seeing cancellations. Number 3 is commitment to your projects. You got to commit to your developers. You got to commit to your projects. And I know this is the most business-like point on this list that is meant to be just from a sort of consumer standpoint. But take this from a consumer standpoint. It's really weird to buy a console because, hey, you announced this big fancy new game, and then it languishes in limbo for years, and then you cancel it. And it wasn't just one project, it was many projects. And it happens over and over and over again. And the latest being Perfect Dark, and we more or less have heard from rumors Contraband's gone at this point too. So that is beyond frustrating, and nobody, you don't want to have a reputation of never finishing what you start, and that's where Xbox is right now, because when Sony announces a project, it generally comes out. Even if it's not exciting, it generally comes out. We know Ghost of Yotei took forever to get announced, but it's coming out. It's done. Even when the project is a complete disaster, it came out. They released Concord. It did unbelievably terribly, but they put it out for 11 days and then they pulled it. Now that's a whole, that's a probably not a great comparison, but Concord, for all of its failings, got further than Perfect Dark did, and that's saying something right there. So many, just with the amount of games that just never really happen, that just keep getting canceled. We really need to see projects need to be understood. Like shutting down Tango, you release a game, you have Evil Within, you have Tokyo Ghostwire, and then Hi-Fi Rush comes out, and this is great, and then you immediately shut down the studio, meaning that franchise is pretty much gone. Now, it was sold to Krafton, I understand, and there will be a Hi-Fi Rush 2, but for a moment there, it was basically like, well, that game came out, it was critically acclaimed, time to get rid of the studio. Time to get rid of the studio making Perfect Dark. Time to get rid of chunks and whole swaths of these other developers we bought. There's no faith there. As a consumer, it feels like you're just constantly on this death march of marching these developers along this trail, until they all just die off one by one. And what? In the name of what? In the name of what? AI? In the name of Copilot? In the name of short-term gains? How does that benefit me as an Xbox player in any way, shape, or form to constantly shut down studios, cancel projects, and then weaken whatever developers studios are left? That is just insanely toxic. It's insanely discouraging to buying a product, because it seems like you just constantly are just chopping off your own limbs, your own supply of games. So we need to see some sort of commitment. I don't know how you do this, but there needs to be a lot more commitment to finishing projects and keeping developers around, because right now, the perception from the consumer standpoint, Phil, Matt, Sarah, I'm talking to you three specifically, even though I'm actually pretty sure you three know this. So maybe there's people above you that need to hear this more than you three. But the perception right now is that Xbox is the Midas touch of everything. Every studio they buy eventually withers and dies. You are like EA on a first-party scale. You buy something, you cancel their projects, and eventually you just get rid of all the staff that there or force them to leave. So your perception right now is that everything you touch, you ruin and wither and wilt. And that has to change. And it's not going to change when your next quarterly or next yearly comes up and it's like, well, sadly, we have to announce a departure or the layoff of X amount of hundreds of more employees from these other developers. That's not going to happen, and that's not going to breed any sort of commitment, or it's not going to help your image in any way, shape, or form. We need to see commitment. We need to see hiring. We need to see projects come to life, and we need to see them come out. We need to see commitment to Xbox as a brand. And the best thing I think could happen is somehow giving some autonomy to the Xbox division, and we need to see not so much chipping away at it when Big Daddy Microsoft needs to have some short-term gains for shareholders and for AI, the AI bubble. And I can't wait for that thing to burst, because all it's done has made everything in gaming worse. It's made everything worse. There will be claims, there will be, all kinds of speeches, there will be all kinds of seminars about how AI is turning things around, making things faster, making things easier. It hasn't, from the consumer perspective, it has just made things worse. Because all we've seen is cancellation, layoff, cancellation. Nothing's better. This is an absolute fool's gold. But I don't want to get on the tangent of AI. But again, just to be clear here, fuck AI. Number 2, I said this in Sony, and I think it should go here. Free online gameplay. Not Game Pass. Game Pass can stay as a paid subscription service. It is the best deal in gaming. It is. Regardless of all the other things that I've said here, Game Pass is the best deal in gaming. It really is. But that should not be tied to playing video games online. Again, if you want to know why the forever games, why are so many people still playing online games that are 6 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old? Why are most people still playing Fortnite and Minecraft and Roblox? A lot of it has to do with because where they play those games, especially, it's free. You don't have to pay a subscription fee just to go online with these things. And I don't know why we're still in this phase where, like, understandably, Microsoft started the whole thing where you pay for Xbox Live Gold, but you want to actually get a leg up because I don't think Sony's in any rush to make online gaming free again on PlayStation. But you know who could? You could, Microsoft. And that would be a big boon. That would be a big selling point to say, like, well, you have to pay to play, say, like, your favorite fighting game on PlayStation. But on Xbox, you can play online for free. Game Pass is where we want your subscription, but online gaming needs to be released from its shackles. And that would be a huge leg up. This is an easy win for you guys, and I hope it happens. And the reason I also just say that beyond just being an easy win is my number one thing, because this video is already getting long in the tooth here. And number one, for the next generation of Xbox, the thing that I think would win me, and a thing that I think would win tens and tens of millions of people over to purchasing a Microsoft Xbox branded product, Steam. You put Steam on it. Make the next Xbox have Steam on it. Make it a Steam box, where if it's powerful enough, it functions just like a deck. You install Steam, your library is there, and then you get Xbox verified or Steam box verified. You know, this game, it'll have this function exactly like Steam Deck, where sometimes you could run the game with or without the verification. We just know that verified means it'll run well. The reason you want to do this is because, as Phil, you've already said this, and it's 100% true. You lost the generation that was the worst to lose. People built their digital libraries up on the PS4. That's where most people built their digital library, and that's where most of their staying. But you know where people have an even bigger digital library, one that's gone on much longer than the PlayStation 4 generation? Steam. Now, granted, I know there's the whole, why would we why would we give up our 30% take from Windows Store and give it up to Steam? And I'm like, and frankly, it's like, well, you're doing that anyways when you put a game on Steam on PC, when you put a game on the eShop on Switch, or you put it on the PlayStation Network store, you already are giving up your 30% when you put your games over there, and 30% is going to them. So I say bite the bullet here, put it on Steam. Put Steam on the next Xbox. It's a crazy idea. It's not one that I think will ever work. I don't expect it to ever happen. But I think if you really, really wanted people to be like, okay, you know what? I can have access to pretty much my entire Steam library on the new Xbox versus, say, having to stick with my PlayStation only library. That's a huge win. Huge win. And again, that's why I also say free online, because Steam is still free to play online. But yeah, make online free, make Steam on the Xbox, and include Game Pass, because really at the end of the day, let's be honest here, all you really care about, all you want more than anything in the world, you want Game Pass subscriptions, and you want that sweet mobile money from King. Like, that's what this is all about. That's what it's always been about, is getting those huge Game Pass subscription numbers up, getting that huge mobile money. That's always what it's been about. So at the end of the day, if you just had an Xbox that was beefy enough, beefier than a Series X, doesn't even have to be like hugely ahead of the Series X, but plays pretty much the vast majority of everyone's Steam library, and it's free there, and then you have Game Pass on top of it as a optional subscription, and then people jump in there and they're going to see, what the value that Game Pass brings. All of a sudden, you might have a leg up again. Again, though, you're really going to have to commit to those game projects of your first party games. We really need to see that. We really need to stop seeing cancellations. We need to stop seeing people getting laid off. We need to stop seeing studios getting closed that you bought seemingly for no reason at this point. And we need to see revivals. You need to harness the power of your IPs that you've done absolutely nothing with, especially by Rare and also by Activision. And again, from going from a sort of out of first party, you need to start making some deals with the greater Asian territories, because there's so many big, good-looking games coming out of China, Korea, Japan, and then other parts of Asia as well. And it's like, don't get left in the dust on this one. Make those deals, make those partnerships, man. Put them out on Xbox day one. So that's my 5 steps, or at least 5 ideas, as a sort of, I'm happy with my Series X, but I'm pretty angry as a consumer with Xbox, and that is to say nothing about the shenanigans, let's leave it at that, of the greater Microsoft corporation as a whole. But again, if somehow this gets through to anyone high up at Xbox, these are my 5 suggestions, man. Fund some of the big major Asian games that are being made right now. Revive some of your beloved IPs. Commit to your developers. Commit to your projects. Make online free, and then put the Steam app in your next Xbox. Get everyone's digital library in your hardware. Those are my suggestions for winning me over, or I guess you could say keeping me in the Xbox gaming ecosystem. So let me know what you guys think on the channel, and I'll see you there. Later, dudes.